I want to talk a little bit about the subject of my book, One Eighth of a Man. It deals with the inequities between whites and blacks in the United States. One deals with the median net worth inequity, where a black family on the median is worth one eighth that of a white family on the median. But there are a lot of reasons for this, and I go through a lot of that in my book. But one of the things I do want to talk about is something I want to call productive anger regarding racism and discrimination. You know, some people may not have heard that phrase. Maybe I just invented it, not sure. But that's something I've employed my entire life since I've come to be aware of the racism and inequities. Because there was a certain point in time as a young person where I never noticed it, but I was alerted somewhere along the way that it was there. So, what I was able to do, and just to start, um, I came from a poor background. My parents didn't have high education status. I think my dad may have finished the sixth grade. Not even sure about my mother's educational level. Maybe she finished high school, but that would be about as far as she went. They always worked menial jobs, labor, farming, sweatshop type work, sewing factories. Dad went out of town to work on the docks and things. A lot of this was before I came along. See, I was the last of nine children and the first to go straight to college. And I went straight to college to an HBCU on a business scholarship to the School of Business. And I went there after going through grade school, high school, started in a Jim Crow elementary school. Right before I went to college, I had gotten a scholarship, 4-year ride to School of Business. And I remember one of my white classmates stood up to me in class, who had to be separated by the teacher, and told me the only reason I got a scholarship is because I was black. And I told him, well, I was going to all black school basically, and he could apply for a minority scholarship. He didn't like that very much. So we avoided coming to blows. But I went there and I didn't go there to play games. I studied, I got out in less than 4 years and left, came back home. Matter of fact, they mailed to me later a plaque saying that I was the number one student in the marketing program. And so I didn't even know that. I didn't go back in March and all that. I went and got a job in sales back home in East Texas. Well, I found out pretty soon I wasn't going to be able to realize my dreams in East Texas. Because when I walked in the office trying to make sales calls, these people were more interested in who I was and where I came from. Basically telling me, why are you in here in your suit? You're out of your place. So I got married and I deduced that I'm not going to be able to provide my wife and family the living that I desire to provide staying here. So I left the small pond and went to a big pond, went to metropolitan area, and got on with a multinational, multi-billion-dollar computer company eventually, and that was IBM. And what I decided to do, since I had earned that highest graduating status in my discipline, I said, I better use this and this to position myself where few other people want to go. So I decided I wanted to sell the biggest, the most complicated, the longest sales cycle products and solutions that they had. And back in those days, those were called mainframe computers. Nowadays, I think they're called large scale servers. Pretty much the same thing, different name. They were complex, they were complicated, and you really had to get into the details to be able to present this to your prospective customer. Because the truth of the matter is, the person that made a decision on these products to bring them into their organization were betting their job. If it failed, they were fired because the entire organization was running their business processes on these systems. And that's the way I always did it. I said, I've got to be better, more knowledgeable, more detailed, and willing to do what others may be a little bit afraid to do. See, I was young, and a lot of the people that sold those products were veterans. They had been around for years. They basically climbed up the ladder to be awarded the opportunity to sell the flagship systems. I wasn't afraid. I mean, I went out and did my thing. But part of that motivation was productive anger from what happened to me when I came back home from college. I wanted to make a living around where I was comfortable, around my relatives, be able to spend time with them and make a living. But that wasn't going to happen that way. I wasn't too far from home. I came back and forth. But that productive anger stayed with me. And even after I left that company and went to another company, I sought out the most complicated and what have you solutions they had. So I was with one company, they were bringing on a new product, something they never sold before. And basically, we were selling copy machines. You walk in, you put your paper down, or you hit a button and it prints. But we got into something that was a kind of akin to a mainframe computer of that business. It was a large-scale printing system. And if somebody made the wrong decision on who they selected, they lost their job. So I started doing that. And I started making sales. And I started building up my client base with these type systems. These were systems where people were printing their payroll and everything else back before direct deposit was a big thing. Their advertisements, even their loyalty systems, I say for an airline to, you get these miles and all this kind of stuff. And so I did that for a while. And then a management position came up to do that. The assumption of the people that ran the division was, we don't have anybody inside the company that can do this. So I applied. They looked around and went, okay, I guess you're the guy. And I had a team of people come on and we went out and did our thing. But the point of this is, I always had the internal knowledge that when I walked in somewhere, they saw this first. But when I left, they were thinking about what was inside of here and how that could help them. That's productive anger. I could have been consumed by the fact that I didn't get the benefit of the doubt when I walked in the door that I knew what I was doing. I could have been consumed by the fact that I found out twice that I wasn't being paid at the same level as some of my colleagues doing the same job with far less experience. Yeah, I found it out, and I went and got it corrected. I could have been consumed by the fact that in one location where I was pushing the envelope, I was going to lunch one day with 3 of my work colleagues. One of them was my manager. And he saw a car drive in the opposite direction, and he wanted to do a U-turn, and he got impatient. And he said these words: "Well, what are you going to do, nigga?" Basically asking, "Are you going to turn around? Are you going to go past me?" So I looked at the guy in the back seat with me. He looked at me. The guy in the front seat on the side of my manager turned and looked at me. So we went to this restaurant. He left us out on the curb. He went to park the car. They looked around at me and said, "What the hell's wrong with him?" So I came back to the office, told another guy what happened. He said, "You need to turn that in." And I did. He said, "Aren't you going to go home for the day? Aren't you upset?" I said, "Look, man," I said, "From where I came from, this guy wouldn't even get in the club of races I grew up around." He kind of laughed. I said, "I'm not going to let anyone deprive me of the ability to earn a living for my family." I went to work. I'm making calls. Productive anger. That burning anger inside of me, which didn't consume me, I just knew the treatment we had received as a people from slavery on through Reconstruction, through the Black Codes, through Jim Crow. I went to the Jim Crow elementary school in the beginning. That was multiple miles further from home than the white school up the street. And then I transitioned. So, productive anger, I used it to push me to do things other people didn't do, because the more complicated it was, the fewer people I had to deal with that were competing. So that's productive anger. I still use it today. I make these videos, but outside of here in the real world, I'm still working on business deals and putting things together to take me through the rest of my life. And but you have to be careful, because instead of productive anger, you could get paralyzing anger that prevents you from doing anything. You're just angry. And the next step from paralyzing anger is destructive anger. That's when somebody wants to walk in and take some action, take some people out. You don't want that. And you don't want the paralyzing anger. You just want to use enough of that anger to push you forward, to push you up higher. And this can be not just for what I'm talking about, racism and discrimination. It could be for sexism. It could be for, you know, discrimination against your sexual orientation. It could be for any number of things. But if it pushes you to overcome that, even if it takes the thought of, I'm going to prove them wrong, it still can be productive use of anger. And I'm not angry all the time. Actually, I have a pretty good time. But you have to have something to light your fire. It could be somebody you want trying to impress. It could be, taking care of your family. It could be anything. But just make sure it's productive and not paralyzing or destructive.